The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone. This is George with Astra. Glad to welcome you this morning and this afternoon to FastDocs for IFS, Astra's webinar, the single data capture solution for all of your departments. I've got with me today Mike Flanagan. Mike is the Regional Sales Director of Artsel, and he's going to be showing our demo. Here's our agenda. First, we're going to take a look at FastDocs in perspective. Then after that, we're going to see a live demo of the automated data capture features of FastDocs, and we'll see it in several different environments. And then after that, we'll take a look at the ROI of our solution, and then we'll have a Q&A session. So as the webinar progresses, if you have any questions, just please go ahead and type them in the question box, and then we'll be sure to get to them at the end of the webinar. We are Astra, your partner in IFS. We've been a business partner of IFS since 2008. We've got a very strong consulting staff, and we pretty much go wherever IFS goes, so that means we know very well how the major verticals that IFS targets use IFS, and we're also very experienced in the modules and the processes that are most important to the IFS community. In addition to our services, we've been providing IFS-centric automation and workflow products. Today we're taking a look at FastDocs, which focuses, of course, on the automating of data capture for all of your departments. Other products that we have in the automation area include two of our AP automation products. We've got FastAP Standard, and then another version called FastAP LV for lower volume for IFS customers with lower volumes of invoices. We also offer an automated workflow product, NovaCuraFlow, to meet your needs in those areas where IFS doesn't already provide a workflow. With NovaCuraFlow, the only limitation is your own imagination. And then perhaps the most IFS-centric product that we've got is ClickLearn. ClickLearn will save you more than half the time in producing your work instructions and training documents, because what you're doing manually, it will do automatically, and additionally, it will provide your users with context-sensitive help live inside of IFS. This is a partial list of Astra's customers. At the top, you can see our IFS and CRM customers, and at the bottom, we've just got a brief selection of our automation and workflow customers. This is a snapshot of our partner, Artsel. We chose Artsel to be our partner in this solution because they're very savvy, they're very experienced, and they focus exclusively on capture. FastDocs deliverables, this is what the solution offers. We've got capture, we've got classify and store in DocMan, and then we've got the attachment of clickable images to your records within IFS. When it comes to capture, we do a couple of things. First of all, we do an extract. Basically that means we read either the data on the documents that you want to pass to a workflow for immediate processing, or we pull metadata from the documents for e-document storage within IFS. If you don't need to push the business data from the documents to a workflow, if all you want to do is to store the documents within IFS and be able to access them from your IFS screens, then we just need to pull the metadata documentation information. Then we convert the documents to PDFs or other formats for storage in IFS. We store them in DocMan, and we attach them to your IFS screens. Information, accurate, complete, timely, secure, and on their IFS screens. That's what FastDocs is all about. We make the information available to your process and to your staff when they need it. This doesn't just apply to large size groups, it also applies to the individual knowledge worker as they do their processes within IFS. The alternative is that they can't find what they need. They don't have it at hand. Perhaps they have to make phone calls looking for it. The process stops, their productivity stops. And clearly, that's not what we want. What you're seeing here is a photograph that was taken approximately 85 years ago. Henry Ford, one of his great contributions, great discoveries, he created his own automated workflow. What he did was to bring to his staff everything they needed, exactly when they needed it and where they needed it to do their tasks. And that's what FastDocs does for your staff 85 years later. We've always got a paradigm. Today's paradigm, we've got our business processes, and we know how to do process improvement. The problem with process improvement is that it's incremental. The benefits are incremental, and it's always limited by the process itself. The very focus of process improvement is making that process better. So you're limited by the boundaries, the functionalities, and we all tend to frame goals, make sense, within the limitations of what's possible within that process as it's configured. And besides that, your plate's always full. But the fundamental problem here is that when you're inside of your process, you can see what's available beyond its current limits. And that's what FastDocs offers. A paradigm shift from incremental improvements to a transformation. The beauty of transformation, of course, is it's nonlinear. It's just around the curve, but as we all know, you need to get around the curve yourself to see what's there, to see what the possibilities are in order to be able to take advantage of that. But once you do it, it changes everything. Here's a familiar curve, the S-curve of process improvements. We can see that when we get into a new technology, we've got the introductory period where we're spending dollars and time trying to learn the new process, the new technology. Then we have the sweet spot, the exploitation. And then after that, we've got saturation, when the incremental improvements provide decreasing yield for every dollar and every hour of time invested. Being able to get around the curve, ahead of the curve, is that you're seeing things through a new paradigm. And that's what FastDocs offers. It's transformative change. It gets you beyond where you are so you can do things you can't do today. It gives you access to a new scale of value. And it enables you then to see what you need to do tomorrow. So now I'm going to turn the webinar over to Mike, and he's going to show us some representative samples of what FastDocs can do for you in a number of different areas. Mike, you're the presenter.
George. Thank you, George. Appreciate it. Hopefully you can see my screen now.
Sure can.
Okay. Let's maximize this window. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. And George, thank you for that introduction. George says my name's Mike Flanagan. I'm Regional Sales Director for Hartzell Technologies. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a series of PowerPoints and demonstrations. And I'm going to kind of alternate between the PowerPoint and the demonstrations to show you how we can process different document types. So let's start off first with invoices and customer POs. I know the last half as a sales guy is something I always like. Here we have on the screen a picture of an invoice on the left, purchase order on the right, and they're very similar documents. In the capture world, we refer to these as semi-structured, and that's because for invoices, as example, we want the same header information, the same footer information, and perhaps line item going into IFS, but each of our suppliers has different formats for their invoices. So we have to have a tool that's flexible enough to accommodate the changing patterns of those invoices. Same thing with purchase orders. I want to get that PO number, PO date, bill to, ship to, and of course, obviously, my line items here. So let's take a quick look at how that can work for us. We can intelligently capture things with FastDocs like your header information. So my invoice number, invoice date, my PO number, things like that. And also capture our footer information. And as importantly, if your organization requires it, we can capture line item detail. Let's go to the demo. I'll show you how this works. First I'm going to go, this is the verification station where I, as a data entry operator, an AP clerk, let's say, a customer service rep, whatever it happens to be, where I go ahead and I just handle exceptions on documents that have been brought into the system. So I'm going to go ahead and select a batch, and I'm going to start off with a couple of invoices. And I'm going to use this particular example and this screen to walk you through this verification station. What I have up here in the top, this is my batch, and I've got 4 different documents as part of this batch. In the right-hand side here is I have an image of the invoice that I want to process and I want to capture data off of. And down here in the left-hand kind of center area is where I have blocks of data or fields that I'm capturing. Now you may see some different colors on the screen there, and I want to explain them. The all dark, like the supplier telephone number, is data that was extracted off of the document. The pink characters here represent questionable characters that from an OCR technology perspective, optical character recognition, the software is asking the operator to verify, is this a 4 or a 9, for example. So we'll show you how the verification works. These grayed out areas here, these were done from a database lookup. And a very common way to look up for supplier number, supplier name, and company number as an example is by looking for a unique characteristic on the invoice itself, such as a telephone number. And that's what we've done here, is we've taken the telephone number, pinged a database, and brought back my supplier information. Down in the bottom here is where I have warnings of errors that are present from the OCR. Maybe it didn't pass the business rules, the validations, the logic, so it gives me a warning. This tells me that total gross amount was not extracted. And I can see the total gross amount is down here. I have a couple of ways that I can go ahead and extract that data. One is, I'll zoom it in here. I know these are kind of hard to see on your screens through WebEx. I can just select the data if I want, just by rubber banding it. As you notice, since we did a full page OCR, I can highlight anything on here and we'd be able to capture that. Or what I can also do is I can use this as a data entry screen and just type in 155.55. When I tab out of that field, that error message is now cleared out, and I go on to my next invoice to process. Now this represents another potential issue for me, is we captured 0 of our data fields here. Why could that be? There could be a couple of reasons. One, this could be a brand new supplier that the system has never seen before. 2, it could have been a bad read of the page completely. We just may not have recognized anything, although this looks like a pretty good image. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take a look and see if this supplier exists in my vendor master. So as I mentioned just a minute ago, we can grab something like the telephone number. And so all I simply do is run across a telephone number there. It populates this field, and you notice the supplier number, supplier name, and company number all got populated. So that shows me that this supplier does exist in our vendor master, and then I'm going to go ahead and fill out the rest of the information. Now let's just say that this came up with a 0 instead. Notice how the data that's populated from the database now disappears. That would indicate to me that this supplier has not been set up yet. So what I would do is I would highlight this and reject this document. When I reject the document, it goes off to a queue for someone else to research it and either update the vendor master, or maybe for some reason this came to us accidentally, whatever it happens to be. But let me go back and correct that number. Once again, just make it a 5 there. And then show you how we use something called click capture, C-L-I-C-K, to do things like get the invoice number. Notice my cursor, it says it's looking for the invoice number. I just click on the data. Invoice date is here. It's my PO number. My total gross amount is down here. Now in this particular invoice, I'm going to use that same click capture technology to fill out the line item information or the table information. And I do that simply by rubber banding this information. And you notice on the left how the table gets filled. I grab my description, same way, just rubber band it. That gets filled. Grab my, oops, next one's quantity. So let's go to quantity. I grab my quantity. That gets filled. My unit price, once again, just by simply rubber banding, I can do that. And then my total amount, I grab that information. So now I've filled out this table, and I still have some pink characters there, as you'll notice. So I'm going to do the final two things that we do as part of our verification process. If I wasn't speaking through this, this would go a lot more quickly. I'm first going to verify my batch of documents to see if there are any questionable characters. And when I do that, it brings up my verification window. What I have up here is the data that was captured. What I have down here is a snippet from my image asking me to verify, is this really a 09/15/14? I can either hit my return key or confirm. That is correct. Ask if that's a 1. I confirm. That is a decimal point. I can confirm that. In this one, it missed the decimal point. So I'm simply going to use my keyboard and type decimal point 00. Either hit return or confirm. That is a 0 and not an O. Once again, a 1. Once again, I missed the decimal point. OCR is not perfect technology, but we have the best that there is in the world. It's not a magic bag of beans, but it's looking for black dots on a white background and trying to understand through the pixelation what is going on there. I now have that as a 7. Quickly go through the rest of these. My verification of the batch is completed. So I've gone through 4 invoices. I've extracted all of the data that I was looking for. I've done the database lookup. I've now verified that the characters the software thought it was were what it thought it was. So I've corrected those. Next, I'm going to check and validate the batch against business rules. Those business rules can be something like, don't let me process any invoices that are more than 365 days old. Those business rules can ask for if there is missing data to make sure that I complete the field before I send this batch off to IFS. Validation, passed all business rules. I then come to here. I got to move this little window here. You'll see a green check mark. I check on that. I'm just going to select no here. We have a self-learning technology called AutoFind that asks if you want to remember that document so the next time you bring it through, it remembers the geographic location of the data. Now let's go select another batch. Let's process sales orders. It looks like it's a slow day for me. Looks like I only have 1. But what I've gotten here, and you have different tools up on top here for zooming in and out of images, etc. What I have here is I have a purchase order, and I've been able to grab the PO number. You notice as I highlight over here on the left in the field, it highlights what it grabbed on the image. I've got my account name. My account number was automatically filled in. My bill to, ship to was extracted as written on the PO here. I have a drop-down box here for shipping method, and it looks like there is no ship via or shipping method here. So I have a drop-down box. I can choose which way I want to do that if that's a required field. Best way is a default in this case. If I want to send this FedEx, I can. Payment terms is also empty. You notice that there are no terms. I've made this a required field, but it can be optional. Many times, based on your customer information, there will be set terms, and this will be automatically populated. But it was not extracted from the invoice, nor was it available as part of the database lookup. So once again, I can just do a key from image here, type in net 30. And then I have one final business rule here. Notice it captured the table information as well for that order, which is important, and applied the math to make sure that we were actually getting the correct amount, order quantity times price, and give me the correct amount. But I have one other field here that was not captured as it tells me, and that is my subtotal field, and it says the sum of the selected fields is 0. The way this is set up is I have to have subtotal plus discount or less discount values equals the total amount. I have a couple of options here. I can either type something in here, or I can say accept with warnings because there is no subtotal amount. That's a business decision that you make. But then I just go ahead and send that sales order off. Okay, so that's invoices and sales orders. A lot of high ROI on that because you're really reducing your data entry costs by 60 to 80%. You can achieve straight-through processing. That means from the point it comes in via email, fax, drop to a hot folder, till it ends up populating IFS and the images in DocMan. That goes straight through with no human intervention. You can achieve 50 to 60% straight-through processing depending on the quality of your images. I want to use that as a qualifier. But those are all achievable goals as part of processing those document types. Let's take a look at our next two documents that we want to process. Those would be RMAs and delivery notes. Here's an RMA over here, and what I want to show you really is not processing an RMA as such as I want to show you the different types of capture that can be enabled all through this same platform. We are not a point solution that only processes one type of document. We are a capture platform that lets you process literally any document type. So I've got a barcode up here. I've got an RMA number over here. I've got some checkboxes. I've got a bunch of data in here, some other checkboxes. And over here I have a delivery note. So let's take a look at each of these and then go to a demo of them. So some of the additional capture capabilities you can have, you can capture barcodes and read those to kick off a business process. I'm a huge Amazon.com Prime member, by the way. I buy a lot of stuff there. And a couple weeks ago I bought some golf shoes. Found out I shouldn't shop for shoes over the internet, but they came, neither pair fit. And so I went online to return my order. It kicked out a shipping label for me. I put in the reasons why I was returning it and a barcode that I stuck inside the box when I sent back. As soon as UPS picked that up from my door, within 2 hours, the credit card return process had already started happening. I got a note from Amazon saying, hey, your shipment is on its way back. We're starting to process your credit card. So that's an awesome way of doing it. I don't know if you use barcodes or not, but there's a lot of value from that where a lot of information can be stored on that barcode. As you saw, we can do data-driven lookups. So just an RMA number, when that comes in, is very important for returns and can pre-fill a lot of this other data on this form. We can also handle checkboxes, and those can be recognizing single selection checkboxes where only one of these can be filled in, or where multiple can be filled in, because there are a whole bunch of reasons why I was returning this information. So those are some of the additional capabilities you have above and beyond the regular processing as you saw from invoices and sales orders. And depending on your organization, you can take advantage of all the different tools as part of this platform. If I take a look at delivery notes, multi-page documents as an example, this is a 2-page document. And notice this one over here on the right is upside down. So it came in upside down when it was scanned and attached to an email, or maybe the guy in my mailroom went and scanned it and he put the second page upside down. The software does auto rotation, and so getting both right side up so we know where to look for data. Despeckling and deskewing all built in. That despeckling and deskewing helps you do image cleanup and image enhancement so that you have optimal OCR results. That means that you get the best quality possible. We can capture data from multiple pages on documents. We can ensure that the data across pages is consistent. So you don't want to be mixing up customer information. You don't want to be mixing up supplier information. You don't want to be mixing up HR information for different employees, as example, if they get stuck in the same file. So we have a way to either do just simple cross-referencing across documents and pages, or true case management, where when you have multiple documents, you take a look at like an employee record in HR, and you want to make sure this is really the documentation for each individual person. And of course, we have tools built within the software to allow you to electronically combine or separate pages. So let's go into a demo of that. I'm going to select my next batch. I'm going to start with the RMA. Once again, I have 3 here. These are really good, clean, quality images. And you can dock these windows, by the way, on different screens, work in dual monitor environments, whatever is easiest. I'm working from my laptop here. So let me go back to the first one, where I was able to capture the RMA number. The RMA type, this is a single checkbox, as I told you. It will only let me select one. It recognized that up in this corner here, there's only one selected. So there are business rules you can build behind it. Based on the RMA number, it's pre-populated, company name, contact person, phone number. I don't have any really exception handling going on here or any questionable characters. And then we read the information on the barcode to get a shipping address. So rather than go through each document, what I'm going to do is just simply verify the batch, and there's all clean data. First generation PDFs that come directly from an electronic system into your environment are excellent to have, and they're going to really speed up your processing and allow you to achieve straight-through processing, but that's not always a reality. You get second, third, fourth generation documents. You'll get handwriting on things. We have ways to do the best we can in filtering out some information and still capturing data or capturing the majority of it, but you generally will have some level of exception handling if you have poor quality documents. So the verification is complete. All these documents have the green check mark, and now I'll just validate. Validation is finished. I click on that. That batch gets sent to my export folder, which actually happens to be a release into DocMan for the image and data into IFS. And I go to work on my next batch. And this is a delivery notes. So instead of showing you the exact same type of capture every document here, trying to show you some of the different variations of what you can accomplish with your own documents in your own organization. And I really like that slide George put up where it was kind of limitation is within your head. It's because thinking outside of there and seeing documents and understanding what you can do with them is really important. This particular document that I have, these delivery notes, I'm not really looking for a lot of data off of these, obviously, because you don't always have to capture 100% of the data that's on a document. You may just want some key index data to be able to retrieve that document later on, should you need it in case of an audit, case of a customer service issue, whatever it happens to be. Because not only do we do a full-page OCR on the front end and recognize all the data, we also have one of the options to output, thank you, a fully searchable PDF. Sorry about that. Anyway, so what that means is that you can just go into DocMan or whatever your content management or document management system is and type in the keyword you're looking for, and it will bring that information back for you. So one of the things I notice about this particular batch is I have something that says page 2 here and something that says page 1. If I take a look, down here it says page 2 of 2. So I'm just going to electronically grab this page and drop it down below page 1. I'm going to delete the top level of my batch. And then I'm just going to go ahead and run verification and validation on these 2 pages. It's asking me, is that really a 6? That looks like a 6 to me. The verification is complete. I do my validation. Validation is finished. So you can really power through these images and your documents by eliminating the manually intensive data entry, applying business rules that sit inside your knowledge workers' heads, and then going and using the power of the software to on-ramp the data and these documents into the next step of your business process. Now, the final things that we want to take a look at here are certificates of analysis and material test reports. These are used a lot in manufacturing environments, as many of you know. And so the unique thing or I guess the similar thing about these documents are that they have table structures that for years people have struggled to match up what comes in a COA with what's in their quality control system, because it's not an easy one-to-one type thing. So they've really struggled with it. Interestingly enough, I read a great article about this 2 months ago that was talking about all the problems that folks are having that we face all the time when we deal with customers, or they face. And the article was actually written back in 2005. So it's been going on 10 years now from the date he wrote it, to the fact that people are still faced with these challenges and how to compare this data. So you have like this COA where we're just going to capture the data off the right-hand column. For this one where we want to grab the whole table, not only do we want to do that, we want to compare the results in these individual cells in the table against the specifications that sit in our quality control system. Or you get MTR like this, that not only does it have multiple line items for a single line item, so there's 3 in here, right? You have this data up here, you've got this whole line down here, and then the third line is part of that, which is very tricky for capture solutions to be able to grab multiple lines of data, especially when it's one on top of the other like you have in this area here. But not only do I have that in this document, I have different table formats within the same page and within the same document. So I need a platform that is flexible enough to allow me to capture the data how I want to capture it based on the structure of what it was my supplier had to send me in this particular instance. So let's go to the demo of that, and then we'll wrap up. First, take a look at my COAs. Okay, so as I said, over here we have certificate of analysis. Shrink up that image a little bit. We've done a pretty good job, it looks like, when capturing the data. Down here it's pretty clean. If I highlight any of these cells, it highlights the whole table, highlights the individual cell for me that I'm looking at on the image. I see that there is an error down here. So I'm going to take a look at this error, and it says that the field value compared to the limiting value, field value is 54, limits 47. So this is outside of my range. I am going to reject this document. Notice a little R comes up here because that's outside what our quality system allows. And when this batch gets processed, these will go off to an exception handling queue once again for further analysis or return to my supplier, whatever it happens to be. I'm going to take a look at my next one. Same thing, I've got a questionable character here. Let's go ahead and, can you guys hear me okay? It said I got disconnected there. George, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mike. Yes, I can.
George? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, so it tells me once again I've got an error down here that happened to be in this column. Once again, it's out of spec, out of the range of what's on the document. And you can either compare what's on the document or compare what's in your database. So, and once again, I'm going to reject that as well. I could choose to accept it, but that might be a problem for something like this. I think you'd agree. So then I'll go to my last one and see that I have good, clean, quality documents. I have no errors, so let's just verify and validate real quick. It's going to ask me to verify, confirm that is a 1, that is a 1, that is a 1. If you're running into this level of thing where you're constantly correcting the same character, you can adjust the confidence level per field so that you can have it very low. So if it's not that critical of a field for you, you can have it low, or very high if it's a very critical field for you. So that verification of that batch is complete. Validation is finished. I've now processed my documents. They're off going to DocMan and IFS and the exception handling queue. So with that, I just ran you through a whole bunch of documents in a very short amount of time. I appreciate your time and attention to this. But let me tell you a little bit about the potential impact to your organization before I turn this back over to George. I've been in this business for a long time. If you saw the pictures before you logged on, me and George, we both started when we had dark hair, I think. I know I did. But I worked with a media company that reduced their data entry staff from 24 full-time employees to 4 FTEs through automation of their AP process, start to finish. That was a significant savings for them, obviously a strong ROI. I worked with a telecom company who, through an acquisition, ended up increasing their volume up by 75%. And because they had automation in place, they were able to accommodate that extra volume without adding on additional staff. I'm sure many of you are in that type of business now where you're continuing to grow, acquire companies, and what are you going to do? Build more facilities to house the additional staff? Large utility company I know of, seen speak in public a number of times, automated their AP processes, and they earned an additional $9 million in early paid discounts in the first year of automation. First year. And like I said, they speak publicly about that. They processed 1 million invoices a year to start, and that might be a lot more than you process. But just think of it. And if you take a look where you might be missing on your early paid discounts because your time from receipt of the invoice to payment is too long, you have a way to pay for the system right there just by capturing that and compressing that time frame. I worked with a component manufacturer who their big problem they found out was that because of poor quality in their order entry and in their shipping department, it was costing them over $1 million in returns for incorrect shipments. And so through automation, they were able to eliminate that because not only did we get it done faster, the quality of the data coming through and the checks and balances of the system overall helped eliminate that problem. There's a food manufacturer that we're working with who came across one of their COAs and noticed that they had a problem. Fortunately, they picked it up prior to automation because the guy visually found out that there was too high of a level of E. coli, which in a particular ingredient, and they were making food, so that was not a good thing, obviously, and they avoided a disaster, not only a financial disaster, a public relations disaster, everything like that. So they felt, you know what, it's time we quit relying on the human eye to do this for us. Let's add some automation in to make a difference. And finally, a bridge manufacturer that we worked with shipped out a pedestrian bridge, put it together. It was a pretty expensive deal, and then when it went through its inspections, some of the components that they used and the materials that they used were not within spec. And so they had to take a very large return on that, and they wanted to avoid ever having to do that again. So those are some of the potential impacts to your organization. George and his team are very skilled at speaking with you about where you can impact things by taking a look at your existing workflows, some of the areas where you're perceiving problems on your own, and helping you through automation solve some of those problems. So with that, I thank you for your time. I am now going to hand the baton back over to George and put it on mute so the guy mowing the lawn outside my window here, you don't have to listen to him. So thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So once we've done the capture and we've converted the documents into images, then we move into IFS. And what I'm showing you here is how we store documents in DocMan. I've highlighted the data that we're using in this particular example to index the documents. So they're stored in DocMan. We've got the indexed data associated with the documents so that they're easily searchable. And then after that, we attach the images to the records, the business records in IFS that they relate to, so that as your staff is doing their work, they can easily simply click on these icons that I've highlighted at the bottom of the screen. In this particular example, this is a PO. And when they need access to that information, they've got it available at their fingertips. So now we've seen FastDocs in action. The ROI of FastDocs, it provides a very fast payback and year-over-year savings. As Mike showed you in his demo, clearly With FastDocs, you eliminate a lot of manual data entry, and of course, the paper's gone. So the filing, storing, and searching for physical documents is gone. I think, even more importantly, in terms of productivity and process throughput, we deliver the information to your business processes when they need it and when your staff needs it. Additionally, we add value to your business processes and workflows in many other ways. Alex Ivkovich over at CDF, they're just north of Boston and Plymouth. CDF was one of the first adopters of FastDocs. Had an interview with Alex recently. Alex used FastDocs. He configured it so that all they were doing was reading the metadata from barcodes. And then based on that metadata, we were converting records that related to shop orders, customer orders, and POs. We were converting those documents into eDocs, storing them in DocMan, and attaching them to the appropriate screens. And as you can see at the bottom, I asked Alex as one of the final questions, what would you say to other IFS customers? Would you recommend FastDocs to them? And you can see Alex's answer. So clearly, in addition to the value of having what you need where you need it, there's value that CDF has achieved very quickly in terms of being able to avoid having additional staff and being able to reduce staff in order to get these documents into IFS. Now I'll take a look at the questions to see whether we've got any questions. Looks like we've got a couple of them. Mike, this first one's for you. There are two items in it. First of all, we're asked, how do you handle documents that come in as email attachments, and then especially when there are several documents attached to the email?
Sure. It's a great question, and it's a tricky thing to handle, but we've got it figured out. We can either deal with documents that are all combined into one attachment, or if there are multiple attachments. We can also deal with the body of the email as well and any other metadata associated with that. So it's just a setting as we're configuring the solution. And by the way, all the screens and everything you were seeing are completely configurable. They were just for demo purposes to show you. So those fields you saw, you call them something else, they can be called anything else that you want. But in terms of emails, we have a number of different ways of handling them, and it's just a configuration setting.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And we've got a second question. This one's for you also. Hopefully there'll be a couple for me. So somebody's asking, would we have to buy new desktop scanners in order to work with FastDocs, or can we use what we have?
Well, if I was a scanner sales guy, I'd say you need to buy new ones. But no, it's we want to take a look at what you have. You could probably use any type of MFP that you have or any desktop scanner, but it's always good to review the model that you have and see if you need a refresh of the technology, because the thing about OCR technology is the results are only going to be as good as what you put in, and that what you put in is the quality of image that's coming in. So we just want to make sure that it's got either image enhancement software in it, or we're using ours, et cetera, that type of thing. But chances are you can use your existing scanners and drop things to a hot folder, as an example. But we don't, always encourage update the technology. You're probably pretty well off where you are, but we would like to have the opportunity to review what you're using today.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Mike. We do have another question. This one is for me. The questioner asks, how does this compare to the IFS e-invoice? And the answer to that is this would really be the front end of e-invoice. So clearly the questioner is looking at using FastDocs for processing accounts payable invoices. Once we've done the capture, we would be sending the data from the invoices into the IFS e-invoice module, also called Supplier Invoice Workflow. IFS would take that data, so basically we create the invoice record. IFS immediately recognizes that the record's been created, and then it goes through the three-way matching process. So it's going to look for a PO reference, and it's going to do three-way matching. It will do coding, and then it will do exception routing so that, if we've got a PO-based invoice, then the e-invoice module is going to be comparing the invoice against the receipts against the PO. If everything matches, it's ready for final posting and fully authorized. If there's a discrepancy, then it will get routed to the appropriate approval hierarchy. So this is the front end of the e-invoice module. We've got one more question that's come in, and this one asks, do you offer mailroom service? Mike, do you have experience with that question?
We do not have mailroom service. I don't know if that's an outsourced thing you're talking about doing or what. There are solutions that are built for that. That is not what we do as a company.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
I mean, usually that's like companies like OPEX that do scanning, opening up the envelope, separating things, taking. It's all an automated process. We would come in after those documents come from the mirror room and come into a hot folder in the network, as an example. But the doc prep and all that is not something that we do as a company.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yes.
That takes care of the questions that we received. So thanks very much for attending today's webinar on FastDocs for IFS. Have a great day.